Right, okay. Okay, so we're here to talk about this idea of design thinking, and we're going to spend just a little bit of time talking explicitly about teams at the end. But you're going to notice that design thinking is all about teams, and so really we're going to cover that topic as we go through this. How many of you are familiar with design thinking? Okay, yeah, and I like to use the term human-centered design. It's design thinking is inherently human-centered, so it just sort of emphasizes that element of design thinking. So again, it's a human-centered approach to innovation, and we're gonna talk a little bit about what innovation means. Is anyone familiar with this here? What is it?
It's well, like I guess you step on the things and then it kind of pumps the water out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an irrigation pump. And do you know the name of it?
I know.
The treadle pump, and it was developed by IDE, International Development Enterprises, that Paul Pollock, who uses the human-centered design process, came up with as a very, well, what do you think some of the main problems this addresses are? Yeah.
So the inherent difficulty in taking water out of the ground, this is just a process that's very functional.
Okay, but what are some of the constraints you think the designers dealt with when they were coming up with this particular?
No access to electric power.
Okay, so no electricity.
Lots of access to a lot of labor.
Okay, good. A lot of labor. What else? Yeah, so ready available labor, no electricity. What's another key constraint? Let's look at another image of it and see what it's made out of in this case.
Wood.
Yes, well, bamboo. So what do you think that implies? Two things probably, right? Hmm. Hmm.
They have lack of materials.
Oh well, you're using the resources available,
Okay.
right? And do you think this costs more or less than a big electric pump or digging a well?
Less.
Yeah, it's very cost effective. So it's designed with these constraints in mind, right? And resources and needs. So again, human-centered design is all about starting with the empathy piece first, understanding all of these elements, and then, and by the way, I'm going to tie this in to entrepreneurship. So it'll all come together. Does anyone know what this is here? Yeah.
It's, I'm forgetting the name, but it's something swaddle, right?
The embrace.
The
It's
embrace,
called the
yeah.
embrace warmer.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it was actually invented. Mike will enjoy this, and I'm sorry. He may actually be very familiar with this. It was designed by a group of Stanford students in a course called Design for Extreme Affordability, and a lot of technical students on that team, but some non-technical folks as well. But what are the constraints here? This is a high tech. It actually looks fairly low tech, but it's more technical than you might think, and it has saved thousands of babies' lives who have been born prematurely, especially in India and Bangladesh. Yeah.
Is this the same one that, like, the goal was to find, like, a way with the incubators?
Mm-hmm.
But then
Yeah.
isn't this the product line of that?
So well, this replaces the need
Okay.
for expensive incubators. So again, no reliable electricity. This does plug in for a couple of hours, and then it maintains its warmth for quite a while. So no constant electricity, no need for expensive incubators, no need for training and parts for expensive incubators, and the ability, it's very, very, the ability to disseminate it widely is there, right? So, okay, so these are the kinds of innovations that can come out of good human-centered design. Human-centered design does not need to result in an invention or a product. It could be a new model, a new way of doing things, but here we're just looking at a couple of these examples. Now, I'm using the term social innovation, social entrepreneurship in here because that's what I teach, that's my field. But you can take those words off and we're getting to the same principles, whether it's commercial entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, or otherwise. So when we, a lot of students come in with, with this great idea. Like, I have this wonderful idea, I can't wait for people to see it. And, well, you ask, what are the needs you're addressing? Well, I think it's this, What is the market? Have you actually gotten out of the building and talked to people and understood what this is about? Even why are you even developing this particular enterprise? Those kinds of questions need to be answered first. And that's where the innovation piece, I see this as one fluid field. It's innovation and entrepreneurship. It's not just one or the other, right? And it's because the innovation has to be followed by implementation and scaling, right? And distribution and sustainability. That's where the entrepreneurship piece comes in. But the why has to be answered. What are we doing this for? Who are we doing it for? What needs are being met? So again, we have to understand with understanding the problem within its context. And every entrepreneur solves a problem. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful, right? It's just different types of problems we're solving in the commercial world and the social entrepreneurship world. And then you move to ideating an innovative solution based on your understanding of the problem and the needs and the constraints and the synergies and the cultural context and all of those things. And then you move to, okay, how do I sustain and scale and effectively implement this idea? All right, so design thinking or human-centered design, it's not technically a process, but I'm going to use that word just for lack of a better term. Because it's a very iterative process. So it's not a process in the sense that it's a cookie-cutter approach. You go A through Z. But there is a flow to it. But again, we're going to see how that flow keeps arcing back to itself over and over again. But it always starts with empathy, and then you frame the problem. And oftentimes you reframe the problem once you develop a deeper understanding and maybe go out and test some of your assumptions. Then you ideate, and you turn your best ideas into prototypes that you can go out and test and validate in the community among the people who might be using this. And then you go back and iterate. And you'll notice this divergent and convergent idea. What does divergent mean? Yeah, moving away from, right? And convergent is the opposite. So there's always this divergent, convergent process, especially in ideation. When you're ideating at first, you're not worried about applying convergent thinking. In other words, rational, critical thinking. You're not worried about whether the idea is cost-effective or viable or feasible. What you're worried about is getting the best ideas out there, regardless of how ridiculous they may seem. And then you apply convergent thinking to start to hone those ideas down to maybe a handful. It could be 2, 3, 4 that you prototype and go and test. And eventually, some of those ideas may merge into one or a couple. It's an interesting. Again, this is why it's not a process. It's messy, but it's highly effective. So you have to be comfortable with the unknown and with fluidity and with iteration. You also have to be very willing to not be wed to your idea. What would you be wed to if you're not wed to your idea? Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
So helping fill that gap, like empathizing with humans and what the need is.
Good. Yeah, you're wed to the problem. You're wed to solving a complex problem. And the idea isn't important unless it's actually serving that purpose, right? And so your idea is going to pivot and pivot and pivot until you get something that works. And even then it'll continue. There's continual iteration. So there are a number of different approaches to this idea, this process we call design thinking, and and again. Here are some of this I'm talking about in terms of social terms. The social impact framework is one of them. Design thinking, human-centered design, creative problem solving. What do you notice in each of these approaches, regardless of what they're called? What happens first?
Trying to figure out the problem.
Good, yeah. And regardless, some call it inspiration, investigation, hearing, or fact-finding, problem-finding, but it's always the same idea, right? Understanding the problem. What's in the middle?
Actually doing something about it or thinking about it.
Yeah, not yet quite doing something about it. Well, I guess
Like thinking
ideating
about
is
what you
doing, but it's not implementation yet, but it's now that we understand the problem, we're ideating potential solutions to the problem. And then we move to implementation. That pattern is the same no matter what field you're talking about, no matter what approach you're talking about. So now, a couple of these slides I'm going to hit upon, I borrowed from, I just want to give credit to Adam Kalish, who came in last year from IBM. He's one of the lead design thinkers there, just because they're really elegant way to frame some of this. And then I'll get back into some of my, more of my stuff afterwards. But what is design? The purpose, planning, and intention that exists behind an action, fact, or material object. And so again, you can see that innovation goes beyond just physical inventions. Unfortunately, design has historically been relegated to creativity through some medium, and the industrialized world has separated design into its own activity and created a division of labor called plan, design, and build. And you can see, now, we do need planners and designers and builders, but the problem is when we start to silo those pieces, right? And so we need the ability for this to be more of a seamless way of viewing the world and then interacting with the world and innovating for the world, right? And so that's one of the key elements of design thinking, is that it breaks down those silos and provides a seamlessness. And in many cases, you can have, even though you want a diversity on your team, you can have one person who does all of these things. In fact, that's very common. Design thinking is focused on better futures through the art of the possible. If an idea has any value in the world, it should have an intended benefit to a group of people. And again, regardless of where you're coming from, you have to be solving a problem. So, motivated by a better future, design thinking culture and practices are used to thoughtfully address and validate an idea over time. This is accomplished by having a clear goal which provides a sense of purpose, balancing intuition and rationality to avoid rigidity or ideology. This is key. This uses both sides of your brain. The more types of intelligence is in the room, the better. And of course, you want to engage stakeholders in the process too. I mean, they have a lot to say, of course, about their needs and ideas about what work in their world. And multidisciplinary co-intelligence brings diversity of skills and experiences. So it's a very, very multidisciplinary approach. And I think we're trying at FSU. It's not easy. We can talk interdisciplinary, and the academia is structured historically in more siloed approaches. And I think Mike has done a really nice job with some of the things he's facilitating, of creating interdisciplinarity, and we're all trying to do that. And it's a process to get to that point. But the goal of design thinking is to derive collective understanding and alignment by generating key insights which drive informed and impactful solutions. And then it's about capacity building for self-sufficiency. So with the idea of the embrace, for example, you don't just come in and plop a technology in. You build, is that a systemic approach to the underlying problem? What are some of the underlying problems that the embrace form or addresses? What are some of the systemic problems that, why are so many babies dying in Bangladesh prematurely?
Because they couldn't get the right, they were dying while they were in the incubator, just
but let's say 5% of babies in the U.S. die prematurely and 50% in Bangladesh. Why?
The disproportionate cost of medical resources.
Okay, so access to the right technology. What else? Yeah, deeper levels of malnutrition, poverty, all sorts of systemic issues, right? Does the embrace address some of those systemic issues? Well, Not really, right? It addresses an acute need to keep the baby alive, right? But does it address the underlying issues of poverty and access to the right, healthcare and resources? Not really. Yeah,
I would say indirectly.
indirectly, right.
So if you save more babies, I mean, together, it's not just.
Well, it only comes together if there's intentionality around it coming together. So what happens is there was one lead student who led this team. What they did after they came up with the Embrace is they developed an organization, an enterprise, that then started to work on some of the systemic issues, access to good health care, the underlying poverty issues, those kinds of things, capacity building. This is what we're talking about here, capacity building for self-sufficiency. So it's what I call the wraparound supports that go around your initial point of intervention, which may not be systemic, but it's needed, right? So again, it doesn't happen by magic. It has to be intentional. So let's connect this idea of design thinking with innovation then. And the first thing let's look at is what is the difference between creativity and innovation? Creativity is unleashing the potential of the mind to conceive of new ideas, right? And what is innovation? It is completely measurable. Innovation is about introducing change into relatively stable systems. In social entrepreneurship innovation, it's called an unjust equilibrium. It's this equilibrium that's sort of settled into a pattern, and without some sort of catalyst, it's going to stay there. And so, by identifying an unrecognized and unmet need, an organization can use innovation to apply its creative resources to design an appropriate solution. And organizations often chase creativity, but what they really need to pursue is innovation. So it's really creativity in service to innovation, right? It's not that you don't need creativity, it's just directing it in the right manner. Theodore Levitt, who was a professor at Harvard Business School and an economist, put it this way: what is often lacking is not creativity in the idea-creating sense, because we have millions of ideas, right? You guys could come up with thousands of them just right now in 5 minutes. It's innovation in the action-producing sense. In other words, putting ideas to work, and that's also goes back to this idea of need first rather than idea first. Your ideas are virtually useless unless you actually can turn them into something that starts to solve a problem. All right. By the way, we're gonna get much more hands-on in a minute. So just bear with. The context is important before we get to the hands-on stuff. So busting the silos, we talked about that a little bit. It's being embraced by many fields. The design thinking, that's one of the beautiful things about it, is it's not, even though it was very popular in architecture and design and the engineering world, it's being embraced by all sorts of fields and disciplines. And so it's a very effective tool for arriving at this idea of cross-disciplinary radical collaboration. Learning together is the new norm. Heavy-handed planning, the old school top-down approach. Let's spend 2 years building a beautiful strategic plan that just sits on the shelf. That's out the door, right? Now, it's not to say that long-term planning isn't important. It is, but you can do that while you're being lean on the front end. All right, so what is radical collaboration? It's about challenging assumptions, and human-centered design is very, very good at that. In fact, that's a key component of it, is going out and testing and challenging your assumptions, challenging stereotypes, these oversimplified impressions of people and situations and contexts, challenging biases and addressing blind spots. So you really have to be somewhat humbled in this process, right? Is anyone here willing to do that? Be humble? Nice, all right. Okay, the nice thing is that it's humility coupled with genius, right? Those are not incompatible. So we're talking about harnessing trust, openness, respect, courage, and empathy. And this idea of diversity It provides the widest perspectives on reality. And so it's a very democratic process in that respect. It relies on diversity. And so you start with this idea of creating choices, and you move towards making choices as you move through understanding the problem and focusing on solutions. And this is just another way of approaching, of sort of showing the approach. You start with an outcome in mind. You question, you observe, you reflect. So the question and observing is the empathy piece. But you actually frame first, and then reflect, propose, the ideation phase, prototype, and transform. All right? Okay, turning ideas into reality is often difficult, and a large percentage of organizational initiatives fail. Why is that? Because having a desirable outcome and immediately achieving viability is too large of a gap. So let's explore these three key elements of success in human-centered design. This idea of desirability, feasibility, and viability. Okay. The most valuable design, of course, sits at the intersection of these things. So what is desirability? So will the solution, yeah, come on in. Will the solution fill a need? We've already talked about that, right? And we'll talk in a second about how we begin to understand some of these needs. So a great place to start is to see if the project is adding value to the world. And going out, you have to go outside of your world, your office, to do that. Will it fit into people's lives? Understanding the people our solution tells us how they live and in what way our solution supports or conflicts with their lifestyle. Will it appeal to them? Will they actually want it? Okay, so, and we're going to be putting these slides up, just so you know. You definitely take complimentary notes, but you don't have to copy everything. Again, we've talked about this idea that all entrepreneurs are trying to solve a problem, to create a product or service or model that meets the real needs of their customers. We've talked about this idea that it's not needs first, or it's not ideas first, it's needs first, right? And studies comparing successful and unsuccessful innovation have found that the primary discriminator between success and unsuccess is the degree to which user needs were fully understood. So who said this here? If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. Yeah.
Was it Einstein?
Yeah, Einstein. Yeah. Now, good old Albert was probably a little smarter than some of us. Right? Maybe most of us, maybe all of us. But still, in other words, he could probably come up with solutions a lot faster than we can. But the idea behind this is still valid for all of us. If we fully understand the problem, the solutions are going to emanate out of that understanding, right? So there's still a best practice in terms of facilitating the ideation process. You don't leave it till when you're in the shower singing, or walking on the beach. Although those are good times for ideas to come up. But there's a process that you actually facilitate. Understanding the problem, we're talking about all of it. The social, political, economic, cultural, and technical, environmental dimensions, the needs, jobs, outcomes of the primary beneficiaries and other stakeholders in the system, and identifying constraints, synergies, conflicts, and resources. We don't have time to go into all of these things, but let's look at this idea of jobs for a second because it's so critical. So we're not talking about jobs, of course, in the traditional sense of what you do to make money in the world or to produce value, but the jobs to be done approach is more about understanding the needs of the users you're designing for. So Theodore Levitt again had a wonderful quote. People don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill; they want a quarter-inch hole. What does that mean in terms of jobs to be done?
So people don't want to spend money on those resources. They just want what those resources provide.
Yeah, unless they're a drill collector, they could care less whether it's a drill or if there might be a new approach that's more cost-effective, like a laser that puts the hole in the wall. What they want is the hole in the wall, right? They don't really care about the product you're selling unless it's serving the job that they're trying to accomplish, right? So we have to understand the motivation behind what they're trying to do. And so again, this is a more precise definition. It defines the functional or emotional goals, or also social goals, that people want to accomplish and the problems they are trying to resolve. It defines the action for which a product or service may be needed. And so let's look at one example of a car seat and try to understand the functional, emotional, and social jobs. So let's say I'm a new parent and I have a newborn baby. What functional job am I hiring the car seat to accomplish?
Keep your child safe.
Good. Keep your child safe. Absolutely. Now, those of us who have been a new parent have a lot of anxiety around keeping our child safe. What emotional job might the car seat fulfill?
To provide you that comfort and
Yeah, the emotional comfort of that my child is safe. And now, what if there were 5 car seats? If they were all 5-star rated, so I felt comfortable in terms of their functional job, but one of them said Lululemon on it. And I wanted that one, even though it costs a little bit more. What social job might I be trying to fulfill? Yeah, well, say it again.
Some trend.
Yeah, well, okay, so put it in terms of jobs to be done. Why am I hiring Lululemon's car seat? What job am I trying to accomplish?
Is that the one where it's like helping the elephants?
No, okay, name any brand you want. I'm just not as up on brands these days. But
Would it,
I used to say Eddie Bauer and no one knew what I was talking about.
would it be like acceptance? Like you pull up to like the drive-through and it's like, oh yeah, like I have a Lululemon.
Yeah, acceptance, yeah. It's how I want to be seen as a parent. I want to be seen as a good parent. And not only a good parent, but a parent that can afford the best for my child, right? So there's a
Louis Vuitton.
okay, thank you. Yes. Now that's what I'm going to use from now on. Lululemon is so yesterday. I guess.
What is that
Okay.
for? Is that a brand?
That's a
Yes.
hard yoga
Like,
outfit.
Okay, so
Athletic wear.
now this may sound trivial. Is that door locked? Yeah. It may sound trivial, but you don't underestimate the power of these jobs that motivate people, right? Does anyone take issue with the need to understand these? Okay, and let's look at one other quick example to see a potential conflict that we need to understand. Let's take education. How many of you grew up in Florida? Okay, and what, we have the Sunshine State Standards, right? And did you guys take the FCAP? Okay, was it fun? Okay, all right. So what is a teacher's job? Let's say we're talking about 3rd grade. Okay, what is a teacher's functional job in 3rd grade?
Get you to 4th.
Yeah, to prepare students to pass the FCAT, to hopefully allow students to learn. Okay, what's a 3rd grader's job? Let's say functional job.
Do as they're told. I don't know. Follow instructions.
Okay, follow instructions, do well, learn, do well on the testing. But what's one of their emotional jobs?
Please their parents
What's that? Okay,
and teachers.
okay, but think of yourself.
Behavior.
Yeah, that's true. But think of yourself as a 3rd grader.
Make friends.
Make friends. Be okay. But a social job would be to feel accepted, to feel like I fit in. But what about emotional job? I mean, think of yourself as a 3rd grader.
What about like conduct? Like so
No,
managing your
think what's sitting outside your classroom window.
recess.
Yes. So what's the emotional job?
Make
To have fun. To have fun, right? I mean, you're a kid. I hope this hasn't been lost. So, can you see a potential conflict between the emotional job of a 3rd grader and the functional job of a teacher? Right? If a teacher's teaching to the standards, teaching to the test, which is everyone's agreed is no fun, and a kid's job is not only to learn but to have fun. If your innovation is to double down on the FCAT, we're going to have a serious problem. The kids are going to sabotage that innovation, right? Is there another way to take into account all of these jobs? Can you learn and have fun at the same time? Okay, yeah, so we need to uncover the synergies and the conflicts that are hidden in the system in order to make sure that we're innovating in ways that are effective, that are desirable, right? That'll be adopted and not sabotaged. Okay, so now let's look at feasibility. Going back to this, we need to look at desirability, feasibility, and viability. So is the technology or resources needed to power the design solution available or within reach, right? How long, so in other words, sometimes we're working with serious constraints of resources. So do we have what it takes to move our idea forward? And okay, so how long will this take? Is it realistic within the time constraint we're working within? And some of us are going, have a week to do something. Sometimes it's a year or more. Can the organization actually make it happen? These are all questions of feasibility, and can we make it work in the long run? And viability. Will the design solution align with the organization's long-term goals? So is there cultural alignment? Is there strategic alignment, right? So the other one was, do we have what it takes to make it happen? The other one is, and this one is more about, is it a good fit for us, right? Is the solution cost effective, and is it sustainable? Will the return on investment work for us? And that's not always a financial return. It could be both financial and other. It depends what our mission is, right? All right, so now we're going to get into a sort of a more hands-on piece. We've gone through empathy. We've talked about empathy, and now we're going to move towards framing the problem. How many of you have an idea that you're going to enter the innovation challenge with? Okay, so we're going to work on that idea just for a second, just to sort of make it a little bit more explicit and relevant for you. So I should have taken Albert's name off of here, but no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. So one of the things that framing the problem does is it allows us to frame it in a way that opens up solutions that are not embedded in the same consciousness that created the problem in the first place, right? So let's just say, we have parking. Does anyone feel that parking is adequate on campus? Okay, so how would you frame the problem? Start with how can we? How can we
get students and faculty to where they need to be?
Okay, so you're good. Yeah. Okay. That's a better framing than oftentimes comes up. What might be a lesser framing?
How can we get students faculty to park more efficiently in the campus area?
Okay, so that one is a step beyond. It's not quite as broad as that one, but it's still better than.
How can we utilize more space on campus?
Okay, so oftentimes people will say, how can we create more parking spaces, right? I mean, that's sort of this. Now, what's the problem with that, though? Yeah.
They kind of push their personal needs into the world working around.
Well, you have this very, very narrow concept of how you're going to solve a problem. You're embedding your solution into the framing of the problem. So it's just a narrow circular framing. And now, what is the mission of the university? Is it to park?
No.
Yeah, no. So yeah, education to provide access to the resources of the university so that we fulfill the potential of students and faculty and all our stakeholders. Yeah.
I'll tell you, how do we get the same amount of people to campus with less cars?
Okay, but that's good. But can we fulfill the mission of the university in ways that don't always rely on getting on campus? So let's frame it in a way that opens up more possibilities. You sort of got it early on. So how can we provide? Yeah.
Maybe the university can branch out in other areas where there are a lot of students conglomerate.
Okay, good. So now you're in ideation, but let's frame the problem first. It starts with how can we
How can we help,
facilitate
the people at the university get to their meetings or like.
Okay, well, how can we ensure access to the full resources of the university, right? And so what are ways to accomplish that besides parking? And this doesn't imply that parking isn't important. It's one part of a portfolio of solutions, right? What else can you do though?
Open up like satellite campuses.
Good, satellite campuses, what else? I mean, it could even be at the public library. We don't have to necessarily build satellite campuses, but we could, yeah, what else?
Online courses.
Online courses, what else? And again, we're not endorsing any of these solutions, we're just ideating in a divergent manner, right? What else?
Mobile teachers.
Mobile teachers, perfect. Staggering class times. I mean, there are so many possibilities, right? Public transportation, more walkability, bike share. You know, you can go on and on and on. But you see how different that is than how can we build more parking spaces? Okay, so we want to framing the problem is absolutely essential, right? How we frame the problem. Buckminster Fuller, a great designer, famous designer and thought leader. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. So we can bang our head all we want about parking, but the fact is we're never going to be able to outpace the need. Never. We're landlocked. It's costly. So we need to start to change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. We need to start.
Change the reality.
Yeah. And once people see that there are other ways of accomplishing goals that are effective, we naturally start to gravitate towards those. It's not a struggle anymore. Okay, so OpenID, let me pull that up real quickly because I'm going to have you take a second to just frame your problems. How are we on time? Okay. Is anyone familiar with OpenID? IDEO itself is a great organization that works with human-centered design. It was developed by one of the Kelly brothers who also started the program in design and innovation at Stanford. But they tackle problems all over the world. You ought to look at their site. But OpenID uses crowdsourcing around these complex, messy, what are called wicked problems. So let's look at their challenges. So these are teams all over the world that crowdsource around these challenges using human-centered design. So how might we better support family caregivers as they care for a loved one with dementia? Right? You see the framing. One of the things good framing does is it creates curiosity. Right? Do you see how much more powerful that is than we need to come up with a better solution for dementia? If I told you that, it's like, okay, yeah, and I feel stuck still. How might we better support? Do you see how that opens up your mind into curiosity, and maybe you let it percolate for a while, and ideas will flow. How might we radically improve access to and quality of sexual and reproductive health education and services for young people? How might we provide comprehensive, how might we reimagine the new life experience by addressing the diverse challenges of mothers? Okay, so you get the idea. They all start with how can we. Other types of questions that are very effective are why, how can we, and what if. One famous example is the Polaroid camera. Is anyone familiar with that story? Land was the inventor.
It's only been never seen a Polaroid.
Yeah, well, that's true. The first question is, do you know what a
Have any of you ever
Polaroid
seen a
camera is, right?
Polaroid camera?
Although they're
coming back and
yeah, they're coming back. They're coming
Are they
back.
really?
Yeah. So Land was taking a picture with his family, and his young daughter asked, "Why? Back when we were alive, with the dinosaurs."
we wrong that.
You had to send your roll of film off, sometimes for a week or two, and then get it back, right, with your pictures. And the daughter asked, why do we have to wait so long? And the father, Land, who happened to be an inventor, and someone with enough humility to listen to an incredible, beautiful question from his daughter, said, that's an interesting question. And he thought about it, he worked with partners on it, and so then that turned into how can we put a dark room into the camera? And they made it happen. And so that's where the Polaroid camera came from. It was a beautiful question asked by the daughter, why? And then it also can be what if. So what I want you to do is take 3-4 minutes to frame your problem for the innovation challenge. What problem are you trying to address? But I want it framed starting with how can we, all right?
more efficiently.
Okay, good. Do you have a potential solution in mind already, or are you going to keep it open?
I made 2 what ifs.
Good, excellent.
So first, what if we can teach people how to manage their computer so that they can use it more efficiently?
Okay.
And the second what if is, what if we can develop an app so that we can install it in the computer or cell phone so that you can use the app to increase your efficiency?
Perfect. Okay, so what I would encourage you to do, and this is of course because of the effectiveness of the process, but also the way we're going to judge the innovation challenges is to see how well you engage the process, not just whether you come up with a great plan at the end, right?
Yes.
So one thing you might again consider, just like this group is doing, do secondary research on what's working, what's not working out there. Do primary research. Go talk to people, observe people working at their computers. Ask them questions, and then ideate and come up with more what ifs. And then you might start to converge around. It could be that some of those ideas are combined together. It could be that one emerges, right? But try to engage the process as much as you can without narrowing too quickly. And one more? Yeah.
No, oh, that's what I was gonna ask. The what if links up to the solution right away, or?
Well, you don't, when you ideate, you don't have to put them all as what ifs, but there's an inherent implicit what if in front of it in your ideation process, right? Yeah. What if we? So what if is almost like potentially dozens of what ifs in response to the question, to the design challenge, right? Yeah.
So mine is, how can we get more consumers using authentic natural solutions for their hair?
Beautiful. Okay. And are you willing to have a beginner's mind around that question? An open mind?
I've got a slightly more closed mind now, but
Okay.
I definitely started there and I could go back there.
Good. And even if you end up with your original idea, I really encourage you to just try
Yeah.
and just see what happens,
But my mind's
Yeah.
definitely open, but I have directions.
Sure, and that's very common,
Yeah.
as long as you keep an open mind, right, and the curiosity.
Yeah.
One more?
So how can we address getting haircuts effectively in a timely manner?
Interesting, yeah, interesting. So, well, good. And do you have an idea in mind for that, or are you willing to keep an open mind?
Yeah, so this
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, one more?
How can we ensure that people can always be in contact with loved ones? And so that was how, and their relationships, and that's how I try to broaden it. But then it kind of loses like my idea behind it is essentially developing an app where so you can say if your phone dies, you can use this app on someone else's phone while protecting their security to contact your loved one. Say if you log into the app, it will have your caller ID, and so you'll be able to if your phone dies, if you ever were at the club or something, and you needed to contact someone, you can use this app, but at the same time, it promises the person that is letting you use their phone that there's no security or confidentiality being broken.
Okay. Yeah, when you first stated the design challenge, what went through my mind is
Yeah, because people a lot of times think of social media and
well, what I was thinking of is Puerto Rico during the hurricane. After the hurricane, how do you get in touch with loved ones that are in a crisis situation but then you explain it a little bit more. So you may want to make that more
narrow.
A little bit. You could add some words to your design challenge to make the context a little bit more explicit, right? If you're interested in those kinds of contexts, then you might want to add that to your design challenge, so, yeah. Okay, unless you want to keep it open and go in a very different direction, that's good too. It depends where, it depends. See, that's the thing, the design challenge can't be too broad, it can't be too narrow, but where it falls on that spectrum depends on where you want to be, you know, yeah.
How can we encourage college students to be more active without thinking of the gym or conventional?
And what does
traditional
active mean?
thing?
Physically active,
Physically.
not engaged civically.
Physically.
Physically active, okay, without having to use the gym?
Without not having to use it, without them thinking of like going to go to be more active. I have to go to the gym. You know what I mean?
Yeah, without
Because
thinking that's the only
there's
option.
an aversion to that.
Okay, good.
To be more inclusive. I mean.
Yeah, good, okay, all right. So let's keep moving here. So now we're going to talk about ideating and prototyping, which is the next phase of the process, so to speak. And here we're going to get very hands-on again. So remember, we've done secondary research around our problem. And what is secondary research? No, that's primary research. So secondary, what is secondary research?
Research is already like published by the.
Yeah, so you might be getting online, looking at books, websites. You also want to look at other approaches to this problem globally. You want to know what's working, what's not working, right? I mean, why would you want to come up with an idea that's already in place, or come up with an idea that's already been tested and failed already, right? You just need to know the lay of the land, right? And then as you're doing that, you want to engage in primary research, the interviewing, the observing, right? Focus groups. It could be surveys. It could be some quantitative approaches too. And then you're going to frame your problem based on this understanding. Obviously, you're starting with an outcome in mind. So it's not like you're doing this research without some context around your problem. But you might reframe your problem once you understand that a little bit better. And now we're going to move into ideating and prototyping. Okay, so one of the things I want to emphasize is when you ideate, you start with divergent thinking, and then you converge. When we do this today, we're not going to have time to do that. So you're probably going to move to just basically one idea, okay? Because I want you to get the feel of ideating and prototyping just really quickly. Okay, so this is a... What I'm going to do is pick 3 cards, okay? One of them is a stakeholder. One of them is something that needs to get done. And one of them is some constraint that they're dealing with, okay? So you need to get into pairs. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. So you guys, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And Wendy, do you want to play? Or Kenzie?
I would, but.
She's doing the video, I'll do it.
Okay, so why don't you work with Wendy here? Yeah, right here. Okay, so and you only have 10 minutes to do this, all right? So you got to move quickly. Don't spend all your time on ideating because I want to see a prototype of it. What's that? Okay, so okay, you ready? So it's the stakeholder is athletes. The action is a way to show gratitude, and the constraint is that it's made out of glass. Okay, go.
What is
Yeah. So what you're taking. So I'm going to give you a stakeholder, an action that needs to take place, and a constraint that you're going to work with. And what you need to do is take those things and ideate a solution, right? Now, you know, we're talking about you can think outside the lines around how you interpret these things.
Around
So
ideas.
And so teams are extremely important. It's again, the ideas themselves are not very useful unless they're harnessed, and teams are a critical part of that. So let's just look at a couple of ideas around teams. You know, you need your core team. In other words, the immediate needs that you need. How many of you have teams already? And how many people are in your team?
Currently there's 6 members.
Okay.
And then there's also kind of like another, there's a set of family business students that are.
And do you have specific roles for your team members?
We have the roles created, but we haven't assigned them.
Oh, good, good. Keeping an open mind in that regard. So, but you have roles, yeah, that you want to fill. Okay, so you have your core team. You want it interdisciplinary and complementary. How many different disciplines are represented on your team?
4 on our team.
And what are they?
We're all engineering students. We're a senior design project.
Okay.
So
Do you have anyone coming from outside of engineering?
the family business students.
Good, good.
Which they're
Yeah.
not on our team directly, but they're kind of like, Dr. Perry told us that they're contracted out, sort of.
Okay, good.
They want the research.
And what is your design challenge again? It's the
Rain avoidance device.
yeah. And so you may also enlist, you know, it could be people who work in like case managers who work with people or social scientists to help with some of the research. You know, think about those things. Who else has a team in the room? And how many are on that team?
For now, it's just 2 of us, and I'm managing business, and he's engineering.
Okay. Well, and you don't need to have a huge team at this point. It could be that you run with 2 or 3, but eventually, if you were going to implement the idea, you want to build it out a little bit more. All right. Non-core members, you want advisors and mentors. You may hire or work with freelancers that, let's say, you need to develop an app or a site, and no one on the team is able to do that. You can just sort of contract out that work if you don't want to bring on a team member just for that, right? But everyone should have mentors and advisors. Does your team have that? Okay, good. And how about you? Think about that. There are so many good resources at FSU, at FAMU, across this community, or even beyond. Make sure you guys are a good fit for each other. You work very closely, obviously, so think about the attributes and competencies that they're bringing to the table, the values and the passions and motivations. So everyone needs to have a passion around the problem that you're addressing, and then create a healthy culture. How many of you feel that you have more on your plate than you can handle right now? Yeah, and so that's important. Don't burn out. Don't get to the point where you guys are annoyed with each other. Stay healthy. You have to be in this for the long term. Burning out is not going to do anyone any good. Not yourselves or not the people you're trying to help and serve. And then, when realistic and possible, build for the future. In other words, you won't necessarily need to think too much about this until you get to the point where you're sure you're running with it, with an idea, you're implementing it, maybe you have investments. But one of the things you need to consider is turnover when you're looking to the future as well. Invariably, or often the case, a co-founder leaves the team, or someone else as part of the team moves on. And it might not be because of conflict, they're just ready to move on. So you need to be able to anticipate. Or what kind of intellectual resource are they leaving with, and how can we avoid losing that, capturing it while they're still here? What other kind of skills do they bring? Just anticipate, build a sustainable project. In other words, a team, so that it's not all dependent on one key person. Okay. Any thoughts or ideas around that? Okay. Well, I think we're done for today then. Thanks for engaging, and hopefully some of it was useful.
I have an idea around what you just said.